Hello Team FD and welcome back to Winners and Losers, where today Joseph and I are deviating from the normal plan. We're not going to do an episode dictated by Nations League results based on principles alone. But before we get into any more detail, Joseph, how are you? How was your weekend?
Yeah, good. Although I would immediately like to address the concern of people saying we bottled this because England lost a game. We haven't bottled it because England lost a game. It's just the Nations League and it's boring.
Yeah, so instead of the Nations League, we thought we'd try a bit of a World Cup extravaganza. Obviously, already covered England pretty extensively on We Need to Talk and Sunday Vibes. So we're widening the scope, let's say, on this episode. It's not England-centric. We're going to try and rank every single manager at the World Cup based on the following criteria: exceed expectations, solid job, below average, poor, and ungraded. Ungraded is when Joe and I just don't back ourselves to hold a decent opinion on one of the 32 managers. I imagine that'll pop up a couple times. Joseph, feeling, raring to go. I got up at 5:30 this morning thinking that would give us enough time, come 10 o'clock to be armed with an adequate amount of research. But turns out this is quite a difficult task.
This is very difficult. Some of the managers, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I literally didn't know they were managing the nation. And that will become apparent when we get to some of the less prominent nations. But I think we're going to get a fair good whack at least like 20 of the names, I would say, Hamster.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we do, put someone in ungraded or just can't hold an opinion on them, we need you, the team at home, to bring the nuance in the comments. Give us some more colour and we'll get back to you in the first hour. And together we'll finish this episode with a more solid understanding, let's say, of who is at the wheel for each nation. So like I said, it's going to be a long one this. Let's start in Europe where we can offer a little bit more value to you guys at home. Then we'll move on to the rest of the world. So, Roberto Martinez and Belgium, Joseph. Now, we guided his team to their best ever finish at the World Cup in Russia. Obviously lost to eventual winners France in 2018, but beat England 2-0 third place playoffs. So coming into this tournament with great pedigree, but it's been a bit of a mixed bag recently, hasn't it, in the Nations League, losing to the Netherlands.
Yeah, losing to the Netherlands badly as well. 4-1, I think last night was 1-0. Oh, this is a really difficult one because I think Roberto Martinez, I'm not his biggest fan, but it's undeniable what he's been able to achieve with Belgium in terms of results. But we are talking about Belgium's golden generation, and the fact that there's no silverware to show off the back of, this absolutely outstanding team with Eden Hazard, Lukaku, Kevin De Bruyne, Toby Alderweireld, Jan Vertonghen, Moussa Dembele. The list goes on, doesn't it? Thibaut Courtois in goal. It's undeniably their greatest ever team, and there is no silverware to show for it. There is some good results in there, but I'm looking at these categories here, and
How does he exceed expectations,
I think I'd probably have...
By winning it, surely.
What did you say?
Because the expectations are so high now, aren't they? The barometer is really high for him. Of course, the most wins ever for a Belgian manager. A third place. How do you top that? We can't possibly put him in exceed expectations. So for me, it's got to be solid job or below average.
Yeah, I think I would have him probably in solid job. I think they've probably gone past the stage of having a full golden generation now. Like, it feels like most of the players that are in that golden generation or part of that golden generation are waning a little bit or coming past their primes, i.e. Vertonghen and Alderweireld, who are still occupying the centre of the back line. So I think solid job if he gets to, a semi-final, solid job. I think it's impossible to exceed expectations at this stage for him.
Yeah, I'd agree. Let's move on then, because if we spend 2 or 3 minutes on each manager, we're actually going to be here for the best part of an hour. Croatia manager, Zlatko Dalic. Now, unlike Roberto Martinez, didn't really have a glittering club resume, let's say, before securing the top job. Coached a lot in the Middle East. Had a 3-year successful stint with Al Ain in the UAE. Now, had a dreadful first Nations League campaign, the 2020 to 2022 edition, where I think they conceded the most goals out of any side, which led to public cries for his sacking. But the Croatian FA stuck with him, and he's restored some pride there, let's say, with his latest efforts, or their latest efforts. I think they actually topped League A Group 1 on 13 points, and they also topped their World Cup qualification group as well. So coming into this with good momentum. And he's also had to transition the side away from, aging but successful stars. Although Luka Modric still running things, isn't he? Is this another case of solid job? Like, what would qualify as solid for the manager of Croatia? Maybe quarterfinals?
Yeah, I think the thing is, in the eyes of the neutral, thinking back to, World Cup 2018, when, of course, he took them to a World Cup final and they lost, I think that some people might have unrealistically high expectations of where this Croatia side finish based on that. So I think probably they would take a quarter-final right now. The group isn't the hardest. Belgium, Canada, Morocco. You think Canada and Morocco, you'd be expecting to lose to Croatia. Belgium is going to be quite tight. I would probably have him in below average.
Yeah, I actually
it's very tough, this one. Very tough.
I think I'd be inclined to agree. Let's move on to Denmark then. And Kasper Hjulmand is someone that we're a little bit more positive about. Now, of course, reached the semi-finals of the Euros before losing in extra time to England at Wembley. He actually did such a good job at the Euros that he was widely tipped to take the job at Everton after Rafa Benitez was sacked. But he's still there. He's still at the wheel. And they're playing some really good stuff, aren't they? Beating France 2 times in 3 months, Joseph. Where are you going to stick him?
Yeah, I think he is going to do a really good job. I really like this Denmark team. I think they're playing brilliantly. I mean, Christian Eriksen, obviously playing so well for Manchester United at the moment. Over this international break, it's just looked freakish. It looks so scary. And Denmark, I think, are definitely going to take some big scalps. Like, they've obviously got France in their World Cup group. And judging on the recent performances against the French, it wouldn't be a total shock to me if Denmark topped the group and France finished second, and Deschamps, who we're going to talk about in a little bit, does get a little bit muddy. So I'm gonna have him in exceed expectations, I think.
Okay, and I'm sure when we get to our World Cup preview show on Team Talk, a little bit of insight there for you. We'll cover dark horses, but could be a good early shout for dark horses. Denmark proved to be the case at the Euros, didn't it? Let's move on to England then. Woof. Could open a can of worms here, couldn't we? Now, talking of pedigree, Gareth Southgate, obviously World Cup semi-final in 2018, Euro 2020 final, but a lot of the shine of those runs, those brilliant runs, have been taken off of late by 0 wins in 5 in the Nations League, obviously relegated from their group. Have only scored 1 in that time and have conceded 7. Quite worrying how much experimentation is still going on. But do have a very favourable group, Joseph, in Iran, Wales and the USA. So, I'd expect us to win the group pretty comfortably. If that wasn't the case, then he's already teetering on shocker. How far do you anticipate this England side going? And where would you rank Southgate?
There's 2 parts to me here. There's the England bias fan. I think we're winning the whole thing. And if we win the whole thing, he's going in to exceed expectations. But realistically, judging on how we're playing at the moment, which is tremendously poor, it's over 450 minutes since we last scored a goal from open play. I think our last open play goal came in a competitive game, came against San Marino back in November. I think we are the only team alongside San Marino not to score an open play goal at the Nations League in Europe. Do you know what? I don't care. I'm putting all of my logic and stats and everything else that I would usually base this on out of the window, and we're winning the thing. So I'm going to exceed expectations.
Okay, fair enough.
Should definitely be important. Should definitely be important.
Of George's sanity on the edit, I'm just going to stick with you so he doesn't have to divide Gareth Southgate into 2 sections. But I am a little less positive than you, let's say. But I do like the energy you bring to this Monday morning. France, Didier Deschamps, someone that I've been critical of in the past for playing a pragmatic, dull style of football while having access to a plethora of talent. A little bit like Gareth Southgate here, on the rocks of late. Only won 1 game out of 6 in the Nations League. The Nations League is throwing a lot of top managers under the bus at this point. Losses home and away to Denmark, like we mentioned. Lost at home to Croatia. Only victory came against Austria. And heavily relying on Karim Benzema, aren't they, for goals once more? So I'm not feeling overly positive about the French, but they tend to... I mean, it's an old trope, isn't it? But when the tournament comes around, grind out results in the group stage and then pick up momentum from the knockout stages. But I'm going to stick with my gut. I'm going to say what I did ahead of the 2018 World Cup, which he obviously won. And I'm going to say below average. What about you, Tomlinson?
Oh, yeah, I think I'm happy with below average as well. I kind of agree with the Gareth Southgate assessment here with Didier Deschamps, having a really star-studded squad, but not being able to get the best out of him. And if my bias was taken away, I would probably have England in that below average as well. So, yeah, I'm pretty happy to have Didier Deschamps there, given some of the recent results, the way they're playing football, and the pretty disastrous Euro 2020 campaign.
Yeah, and another manager who's having parallels with the aforementioned coaches in Southgate, in Deschamps, Hansi Flick for Germany. Booed off midweek, Tomlinson.
Yeah, so it's a big game tonight, I suppose, between Germany and England, technically, isn't it? Because obviously the Germans are on such a poor run of form as well. Of course, they've played 7 games in 2022. 4 of them have been 1-1 draws. They've lost as well, so only 2 wins in 7. I think the knives are out from a little bit in Germany. Very similar to Gareth Southgate as well, where he's got some decent players, but they're just playing pretty horrible football. Timo Werner couldn't hit a barn door. And if I had Deschamps in below average, and I take my bias away, I would have had Southgate in below average. I'm going to have to put Hansi Flick and this Germany side in below average because I'm unconvinced about what they're going to do at this World Cup, to be honest with you.
I love it. Very punchy. Some brave calls early on there. Let's move on to the Netherlands then with Louis van Gaal. Only conceded 13 goals in the last 15 games. Who'd have thunk it? Louis van Gaal has made them watertight at the back, as he does most places he goes. 11 wins, 4 draws, 0 losses in the last 15, and they have an extremely favourable group in Ecuador, Qatar and Senegal. Joseph, I'm actually going to go exceed expectations here. Are you in the same boat?
Yeah, because I feel like expectations aren't that high for the Dutch. Like, I don't think the neutral would be expecting Holland to win the competition. I think anything past the quarterfinal would be pretty successful for this Dutch side, and they are, like you said, extremely difficult to beat. That back line, the fact that Matthijs de Ligt can't really get a sniff in there, and we saw Louis van Gaal last night talking about his best centre-back pairings, not including him, the likes of Nathan Ake, Yuri Timber, Virgil van Dijk. I think that they're going to be a very, very tough team to face, the Dutch, and that is largely down to Louis van Gaal's management. They were incredibly difficult to beat at the 2014 World Cup as well, when they took it really, really deep, and there's no reason they can't do that again. So yeah, exceed expectations.
Yeah, I think with the Netherlands not qualifying for the last World Cup, free hit for us there to shower a bit of positivity on Louis van Gaal. I agree with exceed. Moving on to Poland then with Czeslaw Michniewicz. And I'll give you a bit of background on him. Was researching him this morning. The Belarusian managed 10 different sides in Poland, including Legia Warsaw. Now, only managed 50 plus games at 2 of them, so somewhat of a journeyman, but did win the Ekstraklasa in 2021. So very well regarded in the Polish football scene. I think he also managed their under 21s as well from 2017 to 2020, where he qualified for their first European Championship in 25 years. So it feels like they've got the right guy at the helm, someone that knows Polish football inside out. Solid World Cup qualification campaign. Obviously came second to England, collecting 20 points. And I think they've got they're in one of the most interesting groups in the tournament with regards to who can sneak through, right? Poland, Saudi Arabia, Argentina, Mexico. Now, I feel like Poland and Mexico could finish second behind Argentina. Argentina are in fine fettle as well, aren't they? We'll get to them shortly. But that is a very competitive group. And this guy picked Poland up at a time when, Paulo Sousa, I think maybe fell out of the FA, left for Flamengo on the eve of their World Cup qualification bout with Sweden. So he came in a high pressure environment, delivered, and has sort of carried on that momentum since. I'm going to go solid job.
Okay. I'll stick with you there because I have no clue about the guy.
Yeah, I thought I'd take the initiative with that one. Let's move on to Portugal then. Fernando Santos. Still there.
Still there.
I was about to say still going strong, but that depends very much on who you ask. Obviously, 2016 Euros winner, 2019 Nations League winner. But should he be delivering a better style and brand of football with the players at his disposal, Joe? Have been scoring some goals of late, I guess.
The thing is that I think people need to realise is boring sides win international tournaments. That is the simple fact about it. If you go back through history, the most boring teams classically win international tournaments. That's why you see, Deschamps is boring. Southgate is going to be boring. I think some of the duller teams will end up doing a little bit better, but I do worry for Fernando Santos. I feel like he's maybe gone one tournament too many here. I thought the Thiago Giallo thing midweek actually cracked me up, to be honest with you, where he obviously needed to bring a centre-back on and had to admit after the game that he forgot he had Thiago Giallo on the bench. Like that, not a great sign, but hilarious as well. I don't know. I think... Yeah, not massive. I'm not a massive fan of Fernando Santos anymore. I think I'm probably going to go below average because I can see them going out like the round of 16.
I agree. I mean, underwhelmed at the last two tournaments, last 16 in Russia and at Euro 2020. So, I mean, if he does that again, I think he's pretty much gone, isn't he?
Yeah.
The group has the potential to be tricky as well. Ghana, Uruguay, South Korea, all solid sides. It's not a...
And there's pressure on him, isn't there? With Ronaldo, with Bruno, Bernardo, Joao Felix. Like, there's so many talented players in that lineup.
Absolutely not a given that they're going to go through top of that group. Moving on to Serbia then with Dragan Stojkovic, the old Yugoslavia national team and Red Star Belgrade legend. Now widely regarded as one of their best exports, but only managed in Japan and China at club level prior to this. So I did think, maybe a bit of a risk there, but has only lost 3 of his first 19 games. Finished top of his World Cup qualification group. Had a solid Nations League outing thus far. I think only lost 1 of 5 matches. However, Joseph, is this the group of death? Well, Cameroon, Brazil, Switzerland.
Yeah.
For a nation like Serbia, not a very favourable draw. But I think as long as they remain competitive in that group, we could probably put solid job down. Do you think expectations have come down by virtue of being in such a hard group?
I think the expectations are still probably to get out of the group or get very close to getting out of the group with players like Dusan Vlahovic and Sergej Milinkovic-Savic. I think the expectation
Mitrovic.
To get out of that group. I know that the Swiss haven't looked great and Brazil are going to top it. So I'm going to say below average.
Okay. I'm happy to go with
But it's guesswork because I just don't know a lot about him.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, this is not comprehensive, is it? This is just a guessing game. Let's move on to Spain then with Luis Enrique. Now, I was extremely impressed with them at the Euros. Thought they were very unfortunate to go out at the stage they did against Italy. And I don't know, I suppose some of that positivity has been diminished of late. Lost a bit of momentum, haven't they, in the Nations League? It's been gone in fits and starts. 2 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss in their last 5 games. The lack of world-class number 9 becoming more prevalent with every passing fixture, it feels like. I mean, was it against Switzerland where Asensio played as a false 9? Rauda Thomas has got back into the fold. Obviously, Murata has played every now and then, probably still his go-to guy. And Costa Rica, Germany, Japan has the potential to be a difficult group. I'm still tempted to go solid job though, just because of how impressive they were at Euro 2020.
Yeah, I think he's probably the best coach at the tournament as well. Like, I know that Hansi Flick won the treble at Bayern too, but for me, he is probably the best out-and-out coach, Luis Enrique. I could see him leaving the national team for the highest level job. If he was to leave, I could imagine him going to one of Europe's elite sides, to be honest with you. But he does have a little bit of the Spanish Southgates about what he's saying in the press recently. Now, if Southgate came out with a quote like, I'm guided more by what they've done and are doing with the national team than what they're doing with their clubs, which is effectively what he's doing, Southgate, by picking players like Maguire, then I think the knives would be out. But, Luis Enrique, because of his pedigree and because of some of the players he's got at his disposal, slightly less hammered for those sort of statements. I'm happy to put him in solid job as well, though.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a fair assessment. Moving on to Switzerland then with Murat Yakin, who is the older brother of Hakan Yakin.
Crazy.
The Yakins are the Swiss Nevilles. Not sure who that is doing a disservice to, but we'll move on. Anyway, Yakin won the Super league twice with Ball, but that was 10 years ago. His management career been pretty unspectacular since. Was actually coaching in the second tier of Swiss football with FC Schaffhausen. So I think he's pretty fortunate to be in this position. Did have a tough Nations League group. Did top their World Cup qualification group though, with Italy finishing second. So maybe overperformed in that area. But I'm going to go for below average.
Are you?
Because I thought they were surprisingly good under the former Lazio coach at Euro 2020. That game against France, probably my favourite fixture, with Granit Xhaka absolutely pulling the strings, putting in a performance of a lifetime. I just can't see them living up to those expectations. But like you said, I am a little bit light on info. This is broad strokes.
Yeah, because they've been so up and down. I remember they've beaten Spain and they've beaten Portugal very recently, haven't they? But then they also drew with Kosovo. So it's like it's guesswork for me. I'm happy to take your lead in that.
Yeah, they actually did beat Spain recently 2-1, didn't they? Oh, that's throwing me a bit of recency bias creeping in. Let's just go solid then, because why? Let's be safe with it. Let's move on then to Wales, last of the European sides before we do the rest of world in quick fire fashion. Apologies if you were hoping for something a little bit more extensive with rest of world, but this episode will be an hour if we cover all these teams at the same rate. Robert Page then. I mean, finished ahead of the Czechs in World Cup qualification, second to Belgium, so relatively tough group. 0 wins in 6 Nation League games though, taking just a point. I mean, their group was pretty tough, wasn't it? Poland, Belgium, Netherlands, doing a little bit of experimentation maybe. I mean, what are the expectations? They have crept up in recent years, haven't they?
Yeah. There's still a huge reliance on Gareth Bale, though, isn't there? As we saw with the goals that basically took them to the World Cup. There's still a reliance on Aaron Ramsey, who, has just been so poor at club level. I can see this going pretty badly. I mean, obviously, they're in a group with America, England, and Iran. I expect England to beat them, and I expect the Americans to beat them. I think that Wales getting out of anything, if they got out of the group, then immediately for me, he's done a solid job. But I just don't think they will, so I'm going to go below average.
I actually think they're going to get out of the group second.
Do you? Then I think they got a really solid job. That's a solid job to get out of the World Cup group.
All right then, TBC with Robert Page. Let's
We've got to make a decision. We can't be fence sitting.
All right, I reckon. What was the last one? let's be negative then. We gave Murat Yakin the benefit of the doubt, so my goodwill has run out of Robert Page. Let's go below average. Like I tried to say before then, let's turn the page on Europe and let's go on to rest of world in no particular order, and we are going to do this in quick fire fashion, Tomlinson, so don't worry about extensive justification. You're going to have to lead with the guts here and we'll roll with it. Street. Let's start with Brazil then. Chichi or Tite. I mean, Brazil are tournament favourites. They are unbeaten in 14 games. Bit of a mixed bag coming into this in terms of prior major international tournaments, winning the 2019 Copa America on home soil, losing the 2021 edition on home soil. I think he does intend to step down after the 2022 World Cup. So, a last roll of the dice for him. How do we feel it's going to go?
Incredible squad. Tournament favourites make it basically impossible to put him in the exceed expectations thing, because what is the exceeding expectations of winning the bloody thing? So, I think it'd be fair to put him in solid job for me. I think that, what else can you do?
Yeah, if you get to the semis, which I think they will, automatically qualifies you for solid job, I reckon. Let's move on to Argentina then. Maybe a little bit more interesting because of the rapid rise in Lionel Scaloni's stock. Now, this is obviously his first job in management, some job as well. Served as Sampaoli's assistant, Jorge Sampaoli, at Sevilla, and then followed into the national team setup where he stayed on with Pablo Aimar when Sampaoli was relieved of his duties. Stuck around, got the job, unbeaten in qualification. This is Messi's last World Cup. Imagine presiding over something like that. Can he deliver a fairy tale ending to Lionel Messi's career? Obviously won the 2021 Copa America, so a great start on that front. Argentina's first trophy in 28 years. Won the Finalissima against Italy, dispatched of them 3-0 at Wembley, didn't they? So I would say that he's done a good job to galvanise this squad, sort of reorientate the tactics. We've seen a bit of a 4-4-2 on occasion, or 4-1-4-1. Lautaro and Martinez taking point. But expectations have gone from here to here, let's say, in the last 2 to 3 years. So where does that leave him?
I mean, they're 4 games away from beating the world record for the unbeaten run, aren't they? I think they're 34 unbeaten. Italy's set it at 38. I think the fact that they're not favourites to win it allows him to go into the exceed expectations category. I think Brazil and Argentina probably are the 2 best sides at the tournament. And the fact that, if you look at the bookies' favourites and things, Argentina aren't at the level of Brazil. I think I'll have Lionel Scaloni and exceed expectations.
I agree. Smashed it. Right. Uruguay, Ecuador, Qatar are our next 3 sides, and we're going to bang them out because I don't know much about Diego Alonso at all.
Yeah,
all that I can recall is that he managed Inter Miami before Phil Neville. I don't know how Phil Neville's got 2 shout-outs on this episode, by the way, but he has.
I mean, the fact that he's still playing Darwin Núñez left wing to accommodate Luis Suarez at this stage is just gross. I mean, Vecino's still playing centre mid as well. I think below average. Not having him. Okay,
good. Let's move on then. Ecuador, Gustavo Alfaro, who had a successful spell with Arsenal, but not the Arsenal you're thinking of. It's Arsenal de Sarandi. Effectively won the South American equivalent of the Europa League with them back in 2007. But has more recently won the Argentinian top flight with Boca Juniors. So we're still amongst the silverware before taking this job. Ecuador, like we've already established, a tough group. I mean, should we just go solid job?
Yeah, I mean, they're not the most entertaining team, are they? They've not scored more than 1 goal this calendar year. A bit England-esque there. And they've had some mixed results. They drew against Brazil, drew against Argentina, but then, I don't know. Yeah, I'm happy to go solid job.
You've almost tore me down from solid job there with the lack of goals, but maybe that's dependent on personnel. And we're not going to pretend to know, a lot about the Ecuadorian squad. If you do, hit us up in the comments. Same goes for any of the teams that we just spoke about. Qatar, Felix Sanchez, former Barcelona youth coach at the helm. Won the 2019 Asian Cup with him, didn't he? Where he beat Japan 3-1 in the final.
We've got to have someone in poor.
Yeah, should we just go poor?
We've got to have someone in there, haven't we? And let's put Carlos Queiroz in there as well for Iran.
What, a double header? A doppel... Poor burger,
yeah,
right.
If we have Carlos Queiroz in there, and I say right now he's in poor, inevitably Iran beat England opening game.
Right. I don't think they're the worst shouts, though. I mean, Carlos Queiroz does have a very good record with Iran. 60% win ratio across his first spell, where he was there for 8 years. I mean, quality of the opposition, hard for us to judge. Definitely didn't watch a single minute of that a whole tenure. Unsuccessful spells at Egypt and Colombia in between. So yeah, I mean, only been back there since September 1st. Let's just stick him in poor, and that is us being ignorant. But I do feel like with that top level research, enough justification. And Qatar, host nations tend to perform disproportionately well. Can't see that happening here. So let's put Felix Sanchez and Qatar in poor as well. Moving on then to Senegal and USA. We're going to do these 2 in a row from now on. You've set a new trend. I mean, Aliou Cisse, it looked like he was going to be a nearly man for his whole career at one point. I mean, he had a League Cup runners-up medal in France, runner-up at the AFCON as a player and the manager, and then won it, didn't he, in 2022? A fairy tale story, banished those demons. They have a really strong team. I think solid.
I think
giving them anything other than a solid job would be bad form.
I think they stand a very, very good shout of beating Ecuador to that second place spot behind the Dutch in this group. I think the Dutch will top it, and I think they stand a very good chance, which is why I was tempted to have Gustavo Alvaro in below average and Aliou Cisse in solid. But let's have them both in solid, because I'm not convinced. It's a toss of a coin for me.
Okay, fair play. Right, moving on to Gregg Berhalter, who actually played for Crystal Palace, by the way. He was Crystal Palace's first player to play in a World Cup when he went with the US in 2002. That's obscure, but there you go. I'm making up for my lack of knowledge with an obscure fact there. I mean, won the World Cup. A World Cup, bloody hell. Won the Gold Cup with the US in 2021, didn't he? So he's done okay there. He's done it's not. You're right. He's done okay there, Joe. But you're saying that people not overly happy with it.
Yeah, I don't think the Americans If you are American, then let me know if I'm right or wrong here. But I don't think the Americans are too enamoured with Gregory. Put it that way. He plays some very, very boring football, doesn't he? And like I said, CONCACAF suspect, and his record versus the rest of the world when he's played at friendly levels is pretty dog. So I think below average for Gregg.
All right, fair. Moving on to Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Australia then. Triple header. Hervé Renard, Saudi Arabia manager, he's won the AFCON twice, 2 different nations. I think the first coach to do so. And he also started out as a cleaner, made his own cleaning company, and now he's leading what? Saudi Arabia to the World Cup. What a story on Hervé Renard.
They're in a group where they are going to get hit off every game.
Yeah, but he was Cambridge United manager at one point, mate.
Argentina, Poland, and Mexico. They could come out of that. No wins, 3 losses, 45 goals scored against them.
Yeah, but if he gets 1 draw, is that a solid job?
I would say poor.
Let's go poor.
But then he's not actually a poor manager, is he? He's done a great job on the African scene, so he's not a poor manager, but with this Saudi Arabia team, they're going to do poor.
Yes, his ability as a manager not bridging the gap when we look at the complexion of this group, and that is no insult, like Tomlinson said. Mexico, Tata Martino, the man who could have a much fuller trophy cabinet if like 4 or 5 results had gone his way across the course of his career, bless him. But has done really well at Mexico in the last few years. He's only lost 37 games since 2013 out of 221. The manager of Argentina in that time, manager of Atlanta, where he won the MLS Cup, didn't he, in 2018. I think he lost a Copa America final with Argentina on 2 different occasions. So has a reasonable pedigree at international level. What do we see him doing with Mexico?
Well, we had the Poland boss in this group in solid, didn't we? We think Argentina are going to win the group, as we've had them exceed expectations. With the Poland boss in solid, and it's going to be a battle with the Mexicans, isn't it, for that second place spot? So I think we put them both in solid, and whoever comes out on top has effectively, we'll be right guaranteed on one of the 2.
No, I think that's solid justification from you. Right, let's move on then. We have been recording for over 30 minutes. Australia. Graham Arnold. Is he going to become our first ungraded?
I don't know anything about him. him.
Back for his second stint as manager of the Socceroos off the back of some domestic success with Sydney FC. But I don't think that's enough to warrant even ranking him at this point. And that's not to be disrespectful, but we don't want to be disingenuous, do we? We don't want to just act like we know about a manager when we clearly don't. So Graham Arnold.
I'm not sure about him.
No, we've got a decent Australian audience, so hit us up. Let us know how you feel about Mr. Arnold in the comments, and you guys can be the judge of where he ends up. We're going to make him ungraded. Jalal Kadri as well for Tunisia is going to go into this category because he was only appointed in January 2022, and once again, know very little about him and his credentials. Wish I had a bit more time to research this, but we could revise this the closer we get to the competition. We probably will revise it the closer we get. So let's move on to Costa Rica, Japan, and Canada then. Still got a surprising amount of teams to get through. If you're still with us at this point,
oh
then
my god, so many teams to get through, man.
Right, let's go. We're going to have to judge these 3 in 3 sentences. So I'm going to say to you, Luis Fernando Suarez. You're going to say...
It was not bad, not terrible, given that, drawn against South Korea recently. He's beaten the Americans, he's drawn the Mexicans, he's beaten the Canadians. But he is in the group of death, isn't he, really? If Spain and Germany are in the same group of you, you've got to be struggling. I'll just say below average, mate.
Yeah, population of 5.2 million Costa Rica have a tendency to punch above their weight, don't they? I think they'll give a good account of themselves, but yeah, that is a very difficult group to draw. I'm happy to go with you on that. Japan then, Hajime Moriyasu, a very successful manager, domestically speaking. 3 J-League titles with the Sanfrecce Hiroshima. Also managed the under-23s, where they finished runners-up at the Asian Games, and he finished runners-up as well in the Asian Cup in 2019 with Japan. So... feels like, he's been given the time to build something. They may benefit from that at this tournament. But again, a very difficult group. We're looking at them trying to displace one of Spain or Germany to finish second. Maybe they can catch the Germans cold, mate. Maybe it will happen.
Oh, imagine.
I think, just remaining competitive until, in the third match week in that group, probably which I think they will, warrants a solid job.
Okay.
Talking of solid jobs, mate, John Herdman for
Yeah.
Canada used to be a development coach for Sunderland's youth academy, managed the women's teams for New Zealand and Canada, and has taken the men's team from 70th in the FIFA rankings to 33rd in his 44 games in charge.
Yeah.
So before we even get to discussing the World Cup, what a job Big John has done, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the first time they've ever qualified for the World Cup as well, isn't it? In 36 years or something. So, I think you've got to say solid job, because I actually think they stand a chance, some level, getting out of the group. If they can, catch that Adrian Croatian side a little bit cold and get a result against Morocco, they might finish second. So I'd say solid job.
Okay, let's go solid job then. I've just torn my headphone out. I'm so enthusiastic about finishing this. We get a free pass on Morocco because Walid Regragui has only been in charge since September the 21st.
5 days.
So we can safely put him in ungraded. Cool. And I mean, Cameroon could be the same. Managed by ex-Liverpool and West Ham player Rigobert Song. Alex Song's uncle, by the by. Twice winner as the AFCON as a player, but has only been the permanent manager of Cameroon since February of this year. I mean, what we're learning here is quite a few of these managers are coming into this World Cup with not a huge amount of prep time, especially with a stacked club calendar, right? So I think, again, don't want to be disingenuous with ranking these guys. And I think we've given solid justification for kind of glossing over them to an extent. Let's move on to Ghana then. Otto Addo, again, a surprise appointment. I mean, his only job of note before this, he was Borussia Dortmund assistant coach in 2021. Was a fully fledged international back in his playing days, 15 caps for Ghana, guided them through the playoffs against Nigeria on away goals, but not a huge amount for us to talk about when it comes to this manager, his pedigree, what he's done on the club scene. So very, very difficult. And we'll learn a lot more about these teams, maybe a little bit closer to the World Cup, match day 1, 2. Hopefully, we're surprised pleasantly. South Korea then, to round us off, mate. Managed by Paulo Bento.
Yeah.
Used to be Portugal manager. Used to be Sporting CP manager. But he's been there for a long time now. 51 matches he's been in charge for, with a 63% win ratio. What do you think is going to happen with the South Koreans?
Again, not the hardest group, to be honest with you. We've said already that we're not convinced about Portugal under Santos, and that could easily go wrong. We've just spoken about Ghana and being a relative unknown quantity, and the fact that Uruguay have been so up and down. We're seeing players play that position. We're still seeing Luis Suarez get minutes through the middle. I think there's a little bit of a chance South Korea get out of the group. So I would have Paulo Bento in solid job. I think even if he gets out of the group, he's done decently. Okay,
and I think that's fair. And I think it's probably time we wrap this episode up because we've been filming for a long time. But that was broad strokes. It's broad strokes, guys, and gals back home. Like I said, we want you to bring the nuance to this video in the comment section. So hit us up if we've overlooked the national team manager of your nation. Give us some tasty sound bites we can use on future episodes. Educators. This is what World Cups are all about. Can't even get my words out anymore. It's been an epic. It's been a marathon. I've got jaw cramp. Joseph, what else is happening across Football Daily, Euro Football Daily, so on?
Yeah, what a mess that was. But if you do want more international football content, make sure you watch Sunday Vibes yesterday, where we pick our England starting 11 for the World Cup.
Lovely. Like this video, subscribe to the channel with notifications on, and we'll see you on next week's Winners and Losers. Bye-bye.